Sophie Glenn here again, and now we're talking about crosscuts on the table saw. So again, just like the compound miter saw, which only really does crosscuts, you're going across the fibers now. So with the rip cut, we were going with the fibers, right, or with the grain of the wood. So now we're going across that grain. So hence we need a crosscut. And just like the rip fence, what we need to do is always support the long side of the board. So since I'm going across the grain this way, this is still my long side here. So now I need to set this up where I have the long side supported with the crosscut sled. And essentially how this works is that I hold my piece of wood in place here, and I keep, if I can keep both my hands on the back side of this sled, and then just push this all the way through just like that, right? And I can pull this back when I need it also. So this is a homemade one. You could get these pre-made, or you can, a lot of people make their own. So we have a homemade one here. And as long as this is cutting at a 90 degree to or cutting perpendicularly to your saw, then you should be good to go and make really accurate crosscuts. Another thing you need to note is make sure that, for one, that your saw is at the right angle you need to cut. So if you need it at a 90 degree angle, make sure it's at 90. If you need it 45, make sure it's at 45. And again, you can use combination square here. So I can keep this nice and flat here and use this to reference my 90, the ruler here. Or I can use one of these guys here, digital miter gauge. You might be able to see that. So here I can actually measure it. There's actually little magnets on here. So I can zero it to the table and then attach it to the saw blade itself, and then measure whatever angle I need to measure it at. And it goes within a 1/10 of an inch. So it's a really useful tool to have if you're really going for exact accuracy, especially if you're doing something with weird angles too. If you are doing something else outside of 90 degrees or 45, you could also do a little miter gauge. So it's basically a little tool that's got a metal part, ruler part to it, and it can swing at any angle, so you can measure whatever angle you need to set that up to, and then use that. It's very similar to the combination square here, and you can use that to measure whatever angle you need it to be at. So just a couple tools here, going off of the crosscut version here, but that's all right. So to do a crosscut, what we need to do is, say I'm splitting this board roughly in half, right? So again, I need one flat face and one flat edge. So I need to make sure that I'm using that appropriately. So I have my flat edge up against here, and usually there shouldn't be any gap in between here, but mine's a little off, so I have a little piece of tape here. And I need to make sure that I have my flat face up against this surface here. Right, so I have that going. I need to also make sure that my blade's at the right height, right? So right now, because I've added 3/4 of an inch because of the plywood, I need to also make sure that my blade's at the right height. So I'll raise that up. And again, just enough so it basically clears that gullet there. So right there is right around, right, pretty good. All right, so I have my flat face here. So now what I'm going to do is I need one hand to push back, and you can see my hand is not back here, so this is a danger zone over here. So I have one hand pushing forward, and I'm going to have my wrist and my left hand holding the piece of wood in place and also helping me push forward. So it's a little bit awkward at first, but you do kind of get used to it. So then I'll just push this all the way through. So I'll go ahead and do that. And again, I have my safety equipment on. I can move these out of the way and then move them. Right? So that is not nearly in half, but what I can do is I can draw a line on here with my square and then measure it up to that line, and then I have a perfectly great crosscut. Another thing you can do is, if you're cutting multiple pieces at once, or multiple pieces that are the same length, what I can also do is set up a stop block here. So I'm using just my push stick here, and I can actually clamp this onto here, right? And I can measure what length I need it to be cut at. I can set up a clamp right here, and then I can cut multiple pieces at the same length. So that's a really great alternative to trying to use this and the rip fence at the same time. So this is totally safe because it moves with the crosscut sled, as opposed to using this and this at the same time, which again, you're never supposed to do. If you do happen to do this, what could happen is the wood gets stuck in between there. It could possibly kick back, and we don't want that. So this is that nice alternative here. And you can just use a little quick clamp here. If you have a metal clamp, that'll work fine too. Just make sure that if you are using a metal clamp, that it's out of the way of the blade so it doesn't set off the saw stop. Yeah, and that's pretty much crosscuts.